Thank you very much for coming along to this panel discussion. What I'm hoping we'll be able to do with this very diverse panel is to think hard about what needs to be done to get green technology accepted more widely across the industry. Progress has been slow. Some hotel groups have made more progress than others, but it has been relatively a slow process. So what I've done is bring together a group of people with very different experiences and probably very different perspectives. Keith is the managing partner of Globally, which he'll explain shortly about what they do, but essentially they're providing advice to people who want to be more sustainable. Sari is involved in actually managing the engineering in hotels, particularly in this part of the world, in the Middle East and Africa. Iftikhar comes from a very different place because you're a GM of resorts and your challenge is to get the technology to work and deliver the services that your hotel guests expect. Then, I think I've got your name right, but I apologize if I get it wrong. Ishradan is the Chief Destination Sustainability Officer for what I think is a really exciting new development in Suda, in Saudi Arabia. And I'm sure we're going to hear a little bit more about that shortly. So effectively what we've got so far, we've got a resort manager, we've got a person responsible for a new destination, we've got a hotel engineer, we've got a consultant, and then we've got Bernadette William, who is the Director General at Tourism Seychelles. So we have the tourism destination perspective. And I deliberately wanted to have a panel with all of those perspectives on the technology challenge. So I'm going to go through these in the order I put them on the email that I sent all of you, so you don't need to be surprised when I come to you. But Keith, we were going to start with your business and what you do with Globally. And we'll come to that in 1 second. The one point I wanted to make before is that we are going to talk mainly today about the high-tech dimensions of green tech, but we should not forget that particularly in Africa and in some parts of Asia, we see some relatively low-tech solutions. So the building you see there on the left is actually an accommodation made from plastic bottles filled with sand and then stacked to make the walls. It's a very low-tech solution to providing housing. And then you get the various forms of recycling, and at the bottom there, plastic beams made from recycled plastic. And then on the right-hand side, Keith, something which I think your people would be more familiar with, the combined heat and light. So that takes us very nicely into Globally and what you do.
So I set up Globally 5 years ago because I could see, I've worked in the Middle East for about 16 years, with corporates particularly, and I know from my corporate background how difficult it can be to get companies to make changes and drive change within companies. So using my experience of that, I started applying sustainability and the need for more sustainable change in this region to some of the companies I know here. That's really how Globally was born. And as I say, we work with companies to measure where they are today, to look at where they would like to get to in the future, and make a practical and financially viable roadmap for them to get there.
Keith, one of the things that I wanted to ask you about, and I think it's relevant to this slide, as far as I know, you actually deal with businesses, corporates, across different sectors. And one of the problems I think about the travel and tourism sector is that we don't often look beyond the particular sector to what's happening in other areas of industry. I don't know if you want to just reflect on that a bit from your experience of working across sectors.
Yeah, I mean, we work with many different industries, and more often than not, the solutions that they're employing are applicable in many different sectors. I mean, solar, which we touched on already, is a very obvious case in point in this region. But there are many, many other technologies. At the end of the day, the challenges we face in this region with things like water shortage, the shortage of water, are similar. The proliferation of plastic is common. It's not just the hospitality industry that's suffering from it. I go in a meeting room in many corporates across any industries, and there'll be plastic water bottles. I go in the shops and to do my shopping, and there's too much plastic. So these are common problems, and the solutions available are therefore, more often than not, common solutions.
I've often provoked people and got myself to some extent into trouble by asking what the difference is between a hotel and an office block.
I think there's a lot of, I mean, we actually, when we try and group different segments, we often put hotels, schools, universities all in the same category because they tend to have very common issues in terms of, they often have a very large amount of land. They are semi-public or public in terms of the footfall of people that's going through them. They all serve food, so they have a lot of issues around serving food in a sustainable way. So, and offices, yes, offices have many of those features as well. So there's a lot of commonality.
There's a lot to be learned, I think, across sectors.
Yeah.
And organisations like yours can speed that process. So I wanted to take you then through the 5 C's, if you could explain those to us, Keith.
Okay, so the first thing we do when we start working with a client is to construct where they are today. What is it where they are today, and we then start building a roadmap, constructing a roadmap for how they want to change. We know that every corporate is very different, and we deal with corporates very much on an individual basis. But we create a roadmap for change. And once we've done that, we usually find that they will need help to do things that they can't do themselves and that we can't do for them as well. I mean, we can help them on the strategy side, but there's a lot of technical support that they will often need, and that's where the connections come in. We love to connect companies, particularly within the region, to support partners who can help them deliver the change that we've already mapped out with them. We then, once we start seeing some successes, we love to get some quick wins on the table. It's very important to communicate those. First of all, internally within the organization, because as the organization starts seeing success, starts seeing change, that will inevitably accelerate the pace of change within the organization. But then also externally, and I mean, we touched on this in the last discussion, Harold. The hospitality industry has a fantastic opportunity to communicate what it's doing in sustainability to its guests. And I've never been in a hotel where anyone in that hotel has tried to communicate to me what they're doing about sustainability in the hotel. It could be because they're doing nothing, but in many cases they are doing things. And geez, tell me, I'm a guest. I'm really interested in that. It would get me much more excited about the brand, about the hotel, about knowing more about the technology, and about the whole, it just raises my environmental awareness. So communication externally is so important in every industry to get more people buying into the need for change and to accelerate change. And finally, we check back with the company to see how they're doing. Are we meeting the targets that they set out when we started on the 5 C's journey at the beginning?
Thanks, Keith. I'm going to come back to that question about why hotels don't talk more about what they're doing with their guests. We'll come back to that. I just wanted to share these results because very rarely do we see this kind of detail. Do you want to just say how these figures have been put together, Keith? Is this part of the checking back system that you operate with?
Yes, it is. We do also run a competition every year. And as part of that competition, companies need to explain what they've done during the year to contribute to their sustainability. So they give us numbers, and we then vet the numbers, check the numbers, and aggregate them. So that's 3 years of helping businesses with their sustainability.
The one that jumped out at me in that slide, Keith, is the plastic bottles. I was really surprised that that number is so low.
That it's so low?
Mm.
Yeah, I'm not sure. That's an interesting question. I've not thought about it, but yeah, I mean, it definitely needs to be a lot higher.
Some individual hotels would go through that number of plastic bottles in a year. So it did strike me looking at them that was the one that, I'm not, there's no criticism in not knowing why, but it is just, for me, that's what stood out as very definitely.
It's interesting. I stayed in a hotel, one of the resort hotels in the UAE last weekend, over the long weekend. And when we checked out, they had a survey, various different things. But one of the last questions was, how well are we doing in tackling single-use plastic? So I was super pleased that they had the question, but I'd spent my entire time in the resort looking at plastic bottles in my room, plastic bottles in the dining room, plastic bottles at the poolside. So I'm not sure where they were going with the question, but yeah, I mean, sometimes there's a lot more that, and the hotels know they need to do a lot more. So yes.
Yeah, I think one of the problems with plastic is that it was reduced to doing something about the plastic straws, which was an incredibly unhelpful place to start this from.
Yeah.
Anyway, we will come back. I'm sure you'll have something to say about this, Iftikhar. So let's move on to Radisson. Now,
yes.
You're the hotel engineer representative on this panel.
Well, I'm the area director, engineering, technical and design for Middle East and Africa for Radisson Hotel Group.
And can I say what a pleasure it is actually to have a hotel engineer coming out to talk to us, because it's a rare thing.
Well,
so I'm delighted that you're here. Do you want to just take us through the vision that Radisson has for sustainability, and then talk about what you think are the big challenges from an engineer's point of view?
Yeah. First of all, let me introduce Radisson Hotel Group to the audience here. Many of you do know Radisson. That's better. Okay. That's better. Okay. So Radisson Hotel Group, it's part of the second hotel worldwide, Jinjiang Group. We do have as Radisson Group 1,100 hotels in EMEA region, and we do have 200,000 rooms, 70,000 team members, over 95 countries. Radisson has built a long relation and being responsible business on the first environmental policy that was signed back in 1989. So we have committed as well to net zero 2050 and with an intermediate of 30% carbon reduction by 2025. Until today, we have achieved 18% carbon reduction since 2019. So how this can be reflected in terms of technology on the sustainability and engineering. So the thing with the operational hotel that we do have in the region, we had to take measures based on task force between responsible business, engineering team, staff awareness, and guests as well. So the staff has definitely implemented this on having monitoring and control every single energy consumption in the hotel properties. And this has really reflected on our HLP, which is the energy consumption. But also we had to reduce the consumption on the water, such as having flow aerators, having sensors, also on the light, motion sensors, and changing all of the light to LED lights. But this wasn't as significant as required than the renewable energy, which is solar. Therefore, Radisson is currently undergoing a complete energy change transition to renewable solar solutions, which is quite difficult due to space constraint, where we do have high-rise hotel buildings that we don't have enough space, but still we can achieve a compensation on this export of energy. And we do have also our hybrid solution in terms of hot water and electricity production. So, well, I do need also to state that we are trying to optimize as much as possible from our all of the systems that we have, being efficient, having the circular model in terms of having a heat recovery from the chillers, VRF systems to produce hot water, as well as having like the waste management. And we also option to our guests that to have the green housekeeping, which will reduce again the laundry and all of the washing in terms of water consumption, that upon check-in the guest can option green housekeeping. So we are doing all of these campaigns. We have 37 hotels green certified, either it's LEED, BREEAM or EDGE. And so hand in hand, we're trying to achieve this. And we do believe that you can only achieve energy saving by control and monitoring. So most of our hotels do have smart systems, either BMS or other type of systems with monitors or self-learning machines that we are exploring. We are in regular meetings with suppliers that are offering solutions, energy audit for our properties by installing the smart meters. And then we are having the smart technologies that implemented for the guest comfort as well, like smart thermostats, the occupancy sensors in the rooms, encouraging the guest to take off his key card, because this is also part of the staff awareness when they do dispatch 2 key cards for the guest. So the guest will leave 1 key card in the room and he will take the other key card, so the power is always on. So we are also providing awareness, and we are having our Own Your Pledge campaign within Radisson, which like we do have champions within the team that with the achievement monthly employees of the month for the achievement on the green energy and energy reduction. So typically how we are achieving gradually this, it is a complete shift from the constant to dynamic variable, either on the chilled water or water, like having VFD, variable frequency drives, on the air side or water side, based on the demand, CO sensors, CO2 sensors, which will like tailor the demand of the property and not to have a full consumption. And finally, we did a complete survey all over the EMEA region with the hotels that we can have a solar energy. Some of the constraints where you don't have compensation on the export of the energy, but you can have a self-consumption. Not 100% is subject to the space, but yeah, definitely there is a cost saving average like 40 to 80% as solar renewable energy. We do options also hybrid PVT solutions where again having a hot water production and solar production. There is a new system. I'm in favor of that system, which we installed in one of our property here in UAE, and it was a best practice. This is a thermodynamic system that it's not only based on the radiant of the solar, it is based on the humidity, airflow, which can be installed indoor, subject that you have humidity and airflow. The promised return on investment was 3.5 years. In fact, we achieved that in 1.5 years. Now our 288 Keys property is fully functional on thermodynamic system. We switch off the boiler and we have hot water in the property. This panels, it is only 80 panels and occupy 20 square meter. So this is where we are exploring ideas, solutions for where we do have a space constraint. And this is now, it's ruled out with another 3 property in UAE. So we are installing the same systems.
So sorry, that's an example of where the promise made to you by the supplier
Yeah.
turned out to be true. Are there also examples where the promises are not fulfilled?
Well, we do make our due diligence and check all of the case studies thoroughly. We have been approached by many suppliers where they promised, but we as engineering team, we rejected the offers, and we know that this is not, there is no return on investment and there is no
you
benefit
haven't
of
been
it.
let down.
Yes. So
Sorry,
we have the pushback on all of this.
Sorry, you will recognize this phrasing, I think. It's from your LinkedIn website, which I thought was admirable in its the simple stating of what is actually quite a complicated process. Because it's not just a matter, is it, of installing the technology. You've then got to optimize it in the particular hotel. And it will vary, I assume, from one hotel and one climatic condition to another.
Yeah.
So I wanted to say how much I admired that. But then the sting in the tail is, what's the biggest problem that you have as a hotel engineer in making this whole group of hotels more sustainable? What would you say is your single biggest problem?
Well, I would say to be sustainable, you need to use green solutions. It's not only retrofitting and having the smart technology in place by retrofitting the existing. So 700 of our hotels are operational. 400 are under development. So we do have the margin to have a sustainable hotel and achieve the balance with the carbon footprint. But with the operational hotel, this is where we do have challenges, and we are trying as much as possible to reduce our energy and benchmarking other hotels in the region that do have a similar systems. But this can only reduce the energy consumption, but definitely we will not be able to achieve the net zero with the existing. So it is somehow, like I would say, in some region in Africa, we don't have compensation on the export of energy. This is also challenging. But we understand that most of the governments and countries now do have the awareness to give a compensation on that, which will definitely help us. But again, it's a long journey, 250. So we are there to achieve what we have committed to by 2025, which is 30% reduction. But yeah, there is lots of constraints that would be facing.
Sorry, I can only imagine how frustrating it is when you've equipped a hotel with the very best technology that you can find, and then either the staff or the customers screw it up so that it doesn't work. And that must happen.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it is, again, the awareness that we are saving, and it's not only staff, it is about guests, it depends on the region, but this is where the preventive maintenance is. We do have our applications for preventive maintenance, and this definitely, since we have implemented the preventive maintenance in a smart technology way, that we have it on the apps and everything is being reported, checking the lifespan. Because typically where you do have your maintenance on any item, the lifespan is longer, it's more efficient, definitely it can be for the benefit of the, and we did already notice the difference. We are comparing our same facilities with the same equipment since last year, and we have achieved a good reduction on the HLP by this awareness and implementing the preventive maintenance.
I'm not going to embarrass you now by asking the next question, which I was going to ask, because I see the ultimate boss has just walked into the audience. So I'll come back to that question with someone else.
Yeah.
Iftikhar, and if I could move to you. I was fascinated to find that YouTube video where you talk about how important sustainability came to you really halfway through your career. That's not where you started. You're not a technical person.
Yes.
You're a GM of two major hotels in this region, and you suddenly, very obviously, got the bug to be worried about sustainability and got very interested in this field. So what I really wanted to hear from you was the kind of GM's perspective of what people like Sari does. Because we heard him say what the problem is. It's your staff and your guests screw up his systems.
Well, you know that very important for me. I mean, ATM is full with so many tour operators with the hotels. But you can see the attendance over here, you know. It's such an important area where we promoted. But how many people are really taking serious to come and to listen and to take action? Everybody has a children. I have a son, 13 years old, Sarim, and I'm thinking about his future. So the problem is that we are not really highlighting the upcoming problems in a way that people should come over here to not to sit in few people but to sit in thousands and to take part and to join your club actually. You know that, Harold, how I started the journey in Ramad Ajman, the hotel was not profitable, 65% turnover of staff, nobody was happy. Staff are not happy, they were leaving. Owner is not happy because there is no profitability. And guess how they can get satisfaction when staff are not happy. So, you know, I learned before reaching to technology, we need to get human sustainability. So instead of becoming a general manager, I become a coach. I started working really a coach and train those people, love those people, become a real father. A waiter becomes manager. The reservation, the guy sitting over here, he was reservations today, he's a director sales, you know, sitting here. So I have promoted those people and then the staff turnover 65% to become only 2%. So it was so easy for me to adopt all the technologies. I brought the first compost machine in Middle East. After installing this compost machine, I had a Gulf News interview, a fertilizer that smells like biryani. This noise reached to Sheikh Mohammed Al Maktoum here in Dubai ruler, and he bought 8 times bigger machine from John Orard. So you know that what we did actually is a case study for whole world. Human are very important. And why I'm saying this? The hotel I joined now, for last 3 years, they have a solar system, greywater system, never started, you know. The reason one GM came, he left, another GM came, he left, director engineer came, he left, director sales came. So 5 management change, solar panel you invested in, nothing is working. Greywater is not working at all. So I do believe human are really important. We need to go on your level because you're not a technical people to understand why it is important. And that's what I started, you know, this journey. The compost machine we had in Ramad Ajman, you know, 120,000 dirham. Why I'm pegging it with the bottom line, with the profitability, 120,000 per annum we used to pay to waste collector, you know. They used to come and they were collecting. From 2010 till now, you can imagine that we are 720,000. It is big challenges because they can understand that the owners, they do not want to spend on capex. When it comes to capex, being GM, I will tell them that ROI is 6 months, 1 year. Nobody is going. What I introduce OPEX, you know, I take this expense on me and then I buy that technology. So I bought that compost machine, which was 200,000. Till now, it's a 1.3 million. I'm not in this hotel. But every year, they are saving 120,000. Till now, they have a 1.3 million saving and the machine is owning by them. Similarly, I'm starting in Coral Beach Resort, Sharjah, because we have a plastic bottle. And we are spending 7,500 dirham every month. Average 450 bottles, you know, we are giving to guests in the room. So I'm taking this OPEX on a lease in 3 years. And I'm saving money. The plant is going to install in 2 months' time. Plastic bottles will be out. So, you know, it is very important that we need to understand that how we can make these things easy and understandable to your level. Because problem is that when we talk technology and big things, it goes here and you go back and nobody is adopting. Why I took so serious in Ramad Ajman with a commercial objective. Hotel was 500,000 loss. And I swear, with this sustainability, first year we had a 6 million profit, 9 million next year, 12 million third year, 15.4, 16.4 million, a 4-star hotel was doing better than beach resort. And I have proven that human sustainability is the reason of success. Those people become a really waste warrior, a sustainable warrior, and those people are enjoying their life. They were banqueting waiter, today cluster F&B manager. Imran Sheikh, he was working in internet cafe. Today he's roaming around the world. So we have created leader over there in our hotel, and that journey which I stopped 10 years, I don't want to get a comfort zone. I left from there to take a challenge to the next hotel, and we are taking all this, new adaptation, but without taking people, technology cannot be successful, Harold. Impossible. That's why all the implementation which is in my new hotel, we are diverting cooking oil, used cooking oil from both hotels, Coral Beach, and we are giving to Lutha. All the used cooking oil is going in Dubai and converting into Lutha. Before going to start this bottled water, we were giving all our plastic bottles to D-grade company, and we are converting into garments. And those garments are coming back to the hotel also. So there are hundreds of ways when we started our way. It is not only to save energy conservation and to do, the changing of bulb. There are technologies, and without technology, you cannot get success also. I was unable to reduce the waste without technology. If compost machine was not there, it was impossible to divert 90% of my waste, because average 1,000 waste was from Ramad Ajman. The total waste from Ajman, because we are a very small emirate, 600 ton everyday waste. And we were taking part in this sin, which we were not aware at all, that 1 ton waste contribution was every day from our side. But imagine from 2010 till now, how many tons are diverted because of technology. So technology is really very important, but I think it's very important that we need to peg with the humans also. And when we will take as an acceptability on individual level, it will go on a corporate level, and similarly it will go on a government level, and then all of us will see the change. Thank you.
Iftikhar, would I be right in thinking that the fact that you have successfully improved the profitability makes it easier for you to convince the owners of these hotels and resorts to make the investment for further changes? Is it one of those things where success breeds success?
Yeah, that the same case study, like when I had the first compost machine, you cannot imagine that after promoting the amount of hotels in Dubai, they have implemented in their hotel also. The reason, because it's a case study that we showed that this is the payback. And when we are talking and we are convincing, it was much easier for our colleagues to go and then talk to their owners and to get it done. So this is like continuous effort which all of us, we are continuing, and hope that we will get more people to join our club.
Just one more question before we move on. Anybody who looks you up on LinkedIn can find out about your qualifications. So I'm not intending to embarrass you, but the truth is you don't have a scientific or an environmental background. So when you came to this, it was as a GM without that technical knowledge. The question I wanted to ask was, how easy was it for you to then be able to deal with the engineers and to get the change that you wanted to see? Or did you always feel that you were playing catch up?
It's a passion now, as I mentioned to you, that it's a passion for me, and it has going to down the line also. So it is going to engineer, it's going to housekeeping, and to all the team members. So it's not only like, for example, for me, but it's actually overall the team who is working for us. So it is going for all level, starting from top to the down, So everybody is thinking that this is our religion now. So sustainability is a passion, and it is our religion, and we have to work and we have to accept it.
Thanks very much for that, Iftikhar. So now we come to the kind of place perspective on this. We've got two very different people still to hear from before we go to the general discussion. We've got Shradan, who is it's a wonderful title, Chief Destination Sustainability Officer. I can feel myself being jealous of this. It's an amazing title to have. And then we have Bernadette, who's Director General of Tourism Seychelles. Now, seems to me you're not that dissimilar. They're not the same kind of place, but they're not completely wildly different. They are both in hot places. the Seychelles is obviously a long-established destination with many hotels that have been there for a long time. So you've got a kind of legacy issue. Sudan, you've got the real luxury, and it's why I'm jealous, that you're there right at the beginning. So I thought if we heard from you first about what you're doing and the challenges of your role, then we'll come to the Seychelles. Because in a sense, you're in a new place with the new investment opportunity, and much more difficult, I think, but I'll be corrected probably, Bernadette, is the problems you face in retrofitting existing hotels. And I think when we've completed that, we've really looked at this from a number of different angles. So, Shridan, I was blown away by the images of... I find it really hard, if I'm honest, so I'm going to be honest, to imagine that this is in Saudi. It's not what you expect, is it? It's green. It's an amazing looking destination, and those mountains are genuinely extraordinary. I imagine those are pretty knife edge ridges on those mountains. So it's a very exceptional environment. Do you want to just talk us through about what you're doing? Because it is an extraordinary responsibility that you're carrying to take tourism to what I imagine is an area that's not had much human habitational contact over the years.
Thank you very much. It's a great opportunity to join this panel and speak about, join the conversation about sustainability in this context. So what we are doing here, we're a PIF-owned company, and we are developing around 4,000 keys in different specters of hospitality in the area. We're developing around 60,000 square meters of retail and main elements of secondary and some elements of primary infrastructure. So it's a destination per se. The territory of our company is around 630 square kilometers. It's minuscule compared to NEOM, compared to Red Sea, and our built footprint is going to be around 3.5 to 4 square kilometers in total. Now, what's also very important to be mentioned here is that our area is the home of 75% of Saudi Arabian forests. Most people don't know about this. Our site is located at 3,000 meters above sea, meters, not feet, above sea. And we are very proud to host the highest peak of Saudi, 3,500 meters. Our offices are at 2,000 meters above sea in the city of Abqa. So what's interesting about the destination is that we have two main elements of our business case. That is nature and that is culture and heritage. So hence this role of destination sustainability that is really high up on the agenda of our board and the agenda of our executive management group. What we want to do here, as I said, it's the business case rests on these two pillars, nature and culture and heritage. What we want to do is that we want to keep our business profitable. We want to keep our business as lively as possible in its life cycle. We are estimating that our destination, as many other destinations in the region, will last 30, 40, 50 years. And we want to make sure that throughout the life cycle of the destination, these two elements of our business case are there. Not only because we would like to sell more and more and more, but because we would also try to be responsible. We would like to try to be responsible towards the nature, heritage, and the community. But look, all of that, in all honesty, we've heard about many, many different times. You walk around any of these stands and talk to people there, they will tell you the same exact story. Culture, social, economic, environment, it all sounds good. But what we have been doing, and what we've been really proud of doing, is that we looked into the carrying capacity of our environment. We looked at the numbers of people, of guests, of paying clients who can visit and who can make us profitable with all the additional measures when it comes to managing of the environment, managing of the risks, etc., etc., etc. And we looked at building the hotels and delivering the keys and everything else that goes with them in a way that we wanted to pick a business model that would say the number of people that can come here is this. The type of accommodation, the type of keys, the type of retail, the type of infrastructure that these people will support and pay for in the future is going to be this. But for us, what was really important are the numbers of our guests, are the numbers of people who will be staying there and utilizing our natural and other resources. So this was the starting point. When it comes to looking at the carrying capacity, we obviously calculated the footprint of our operation. Now, what we had as a challenge was that we had to convince our board, and it is chaired by His Royal Highness Prince Mohammed bin Salman, we had to convince them that it is not only that we would like to minimize our footprint in the construction or delivery phase, but more importantly, when you look at the life cycle of a destination, we had to look into the operational phase of the destination. Because you can do your EIAs, you can do your World Bank or IFC inspired environmental and social impact assessments. You have all these plans. You can invite IFIs to invest in your project, and I'm sure that they would, because we have all the standards fulfilled. But if you don't operate according to your principles, and we believe that calculating the footprint and looking into the carrying capacity of our areas was key to that. If you don't operate within those limits, you can look at a number of destinations around the world where overpopulation and overexhaustion of resources happened, and you can see how they actually declined even prior to the end of their life cycle.
Can I just ask you about what I think might be a problem for you, which is I'm assuming that whilst you're managing the development of the destination and you've done the carrying capacity, presumably the individual housing units and the hotels are being built by private companies who presumably enter into agreements with you about the kinds of cooling systems and the amount of water they'll use. Are you facing any problems over policing those agreements?
Look, it's a little bit easier for us because we're a developer and we're investing into the assets. So all assets will be owned by us and will be delivered by us.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit easier for us because we set the tone, we set the standards, and we set the bar pretty high. Now, yes, if you ask me a question, do I believe in regenerative tourism? I do. I can say that. But what I think the main component of regenerative tourism, if you want to claim that your tourism business is regenerative, you have to look into the numbers. You have to look into how much water, how much energy, how much your hotels, your assets, and your infrastructure, how much footprint will they take out of the ecosystems that you have. And as you said at the beginning, we are in a brownfield site. Unfortunately, what our area witnessed last 30 to 40 years is almost uncontrolled urban sprawl. We have to fight that. We have to look into fixing this situation in order to enhance the carrying capacity of the area.
And how much are you being impacted by climate change? Is the climate here changing, or is it still fairly stationary?
No, it is. Unfortunately, we're faced with the aridity. We're faced with the severe weather events, isolated severe weather events. We have 2 rainy seasons, and we receive the highest amount of rain in Saudi and almost in GCC. This whole mountain range, and we sit on the top of it, is called the Sarawat Mountains. We have the spring and fall rainy seasons. We have a lot of fog and mist. We have a lot of clouds. Basically, clouds form above the Red Sea, and then they're blown towards mainland, and then they're stuck to our mountain. And during the rainy seasons, you can see that all these forests and all our areas are covered with clouds. People come from Riyadh and from other GCC places in GCC and from Saudi, of course, to take pictures of clouds. And we have them every day, and they're a nuisance to us, but they're an attraction for them. So unfortunately, we're witnessing effects of climate change. Our forests are dominated by one very, very special juniper species that is facing some levels of die-out. We are also witnessing expansion of invasive species. One non-native invasive species is the Opuntia cactus, and we can see that it's climbing the mountains because of the unfortunate unfortunate effects of climate change and increased aridity. So the bottom line is, in many other places in the world, climate change is affecting us with the changed weather patterns. We are receiving the same amount of water per year on average, but the discharge patterns are different.
And I'm assuming, I've obviously never been there, but I'm assuming that those rocks are pretty unforgiving of the water. When it arrives, it just rolls straight off. There's nothing to retain it.
The terrain is varied. Of course, the pictures that we put on our website are the most dramatic, but the terrain is such that you have a cliff and you have a cliff edge, and what you see in the photos are the edges of the cliff, and then in the backside, in the hinterland, you have a hilly area. That is the big plateau that stretches north-south from the south of Saudi towards Mecca. Now, these areas retain water better. And we have around 36 water reservoirs, right, privately owned or owned by the Ministry of Environment. But yes, the rain is captured there.
So if I put you on the spot and said, what's the biggest problem in your job? what would you say
I want more money from the corporate budget, but
for the investment?
no, yes,
Or for the salary?
The biggest problem, as I see it, is the brownfield situation that we have. We have a lot of people who have summer houses, who have little B&Bs that have no connection to sewage, that have no connection to water. So all the potable water is trucked to these places. It happened only in last, as I said, 30, 40 years. So we could have prevented it maybe. We're only a company that is 3 or 3.5 years old, but still, we will face problems with the local community when it comes to limiting what they do, when it comes to environment, etc. We will have to find ways to compensate them. We will have to find ways how to preserve and protect the heritage that is mostly privately owned. We're speaking about old mosques, old towers, old houses, 300 to 500 years of age. We're also looking into rewilding. We have faced, of course, as in many other places, human-wildlife conflict there, because our way of rewilding is that we took an area of 20 square kilometers, fenced the better part of it, and said no more grazing there, and you have goats and sheep, and obviously a conflict with the local population. So we had to try to find ways how to fix that.
Well, it just goes to show how wrong I was. I thought you were on a greenfield site, but you're clearly not. Maybe you have more in common with the Seychelles than I had realised. But if we could come to you, the Seychelles is being seriously impacted by climate change. And you've got a lot of established hotels, some of which no doubt are environmentally better than others. But how does your tourism authority see the problems over the sustainability of the Seychelles, both in global terms with climate change, but also in terms of what can be done within the Seychelles?
Well, a country like Seychelles, of course, we stand to be very much impacted by global warming, taking into consideration that the great majority of the Seychelles land, I would say, are low-lying, which means that the impact would be very, very huge. In terms of eventually, a lot of times we talked about island disappearing, we talked about flooding, but I would say right now, as it stands, the most negative impact so far, it's the coral bleaching. Because as everybody knows, Seychelles is a country which lives on tourism. Tourism is the major pillar of the economy, and our marine life is one of our greatest assets. And when we talk about coral bleaching, of course, it does have a negative impact also on the ecosystem at large. It's for this reason that Tourism Seychelles, we're doing a lot of sensitizations, a lot of initiatives in terms of encouraging our visitors alongside the locals to participate in, for example, when it comes to coral bleaching, replanting the corals. But that's just one area. What's most important for Seychelles, as I said, we lived on tourism, but we do understand as well that the wealth of the Seychelles is our green. And it is for this very same reasons that right from day one, we all opted for non-mass tourism to be able to control and preserve what Mother Nature gave to us, which is our natural assets. And it is a known fact today that we're quite known in terms of certain sustainability practices, but mainly more in conservation and environment protection. But we want to take it a further step. It's for this reason, for example, that the tourism department, we've developed and we've introduced a Seychelles Sustainable Tourism Label brand for the hotel, whereby we recognize and we reward sustainable initiative and good practices from the hotels. And of course, we started with the hotels, but we will eventually move it to the whole tourism industry. So this is what's happening in Seychelles. And again, Seychelles being an island, all our visitors, I would say the great majority of our visitors, excluding cruise ship business, most of them, they come by explain what are we doing as well to contribute towards offsetting carbon footprints. So there again, there are certain initiatives by the tourism department whereby we encourage our visitors to engage whilst they're in the country in certain activities to help offset the carbon footprint, such like tree planting, for example. Before, one of the panelists was talking about capacity. Right now, we are also doing some audit to look a little bit at our capacity in terms of what each individual islands can hold. So to ensure that, in as much like we said, we live on tourism, it's not overdeveloped neither. And one of our main objectives as far as future development, we're looking at high value, low impact tourism. And there again, how are we going to do this? It's by engaging as well our visitors more into community experiences. So, which means that visitors can spend more, and it doesn't mean that we will have to continue looking for more volume, but rather have better yield just as having a significant volume of visitors. And how do we do this? A lot of people ask us, how do you control? It's simply by the number of licensed properties, keys, rooms, which we will put on the market.
Bernadette, I admire the vision, and I noticed on the website it talks about voluntary, user-friendly and designed to inspire. Now, I suspect that will carry you so far, but there will be a backlash from the tourism industry, or I'd be very surprised if there isn't. There has been everywhere else this has been done, so I'm not sure the Seychelles will be different. Maybe you'll be lucky and it will. But what are going to be the consequences? Now let's take it somewhere else completely. If you look at what's happened at one of the world's really big honeypots, Machu Picchu, is that consistently there's been pressure to reduce the number of hotels in Cusco, all of which has been quite unsuccessful, and they go on building hotels, and then the same industry that's building the hotels demands that government spends more money promoting Machu Picchu. So you get a kind of unhelpful cycle going on. Are you going to be able to escape that in the Seychelles?
For us, like I said, the carrying capacity analysis and the result of the audit, we will stand to be guided by the carrying capacity result. And like I said, the way we're going, it is important for the population as well. Like I said, it is our bread and butter. But by the same token, it is important for every Seychellois to understand that if we kill the product, which is what Mother Nature has given to us, eventually we will not have anything to sell, which is actually what we're selling right now in terms of tourism product. It's our green. You're right to say, where do we say stop? Where do we draw the line? But there again, like I said, we tend to be guided by the carrying capacity audit, which we're actually doing. But more importantly as well, because we talk also about technology and the delivery, how do we keep delivering our tourism goals, maybe using more a bit of technology in terms of sensitizations, in terms of communications, making the people understand that it is, in as much as Seychelles can be small, in as much as we receive 4 times more visitors than the population of Seychelles, it is also our duty to contribute our fair share to preserve and protect the world. Because whatever's happening, it does have a lot of impact on Seychelles. Many of you will know that it is an archipelago, 115 islands. We're surrounded by water. Not all our islands are developed. Most of them are the ones in the inner island groups, but most of our atolls, which are very remote, if you stepped on one, you might be surprised to see at times the amount of waste products, be it plastics, be it flip-flops, that are washed on our shore. It's incredible. So where does this come from? From somewhere. But it is our duty, though. We're not there to pinpoint, but to say, yes, we also have to do our fair share to protect them.
Yeah. I've not seen that in the Seychelles, Bernadette, but I have seen it in the Pacific Islands. And it's really disheartening to watch the rubbish flushed in on the tide, goes out a little way, the tide comes in again, back it comes. And colossal amounts of waste are ending up on really remote islands in remote places, generated from often thousands of miles away on the ocean currents and in those gyros of plastic, and that is very depressing. But to come back to your point about carrying capacity, I've been involved in that a couple of times, and on each occasion the carrying capacity is set at about 1 year's growth from where you are, which is perhaps inevitable, perhaps that's the best we can hope for. But then you kind of get there and then the hoteliers start saying we're going bankrupt, and really hard for the politicians to hold the line, even when the industry has accepted it a year ago. A year later, they're wanting to see the growth again. And I just wonder how optimistic you are. And you may not wish to answer that question. I quite understand.
No, you're absolutely right in terms of where do we strike the right balance? It's all about the right balance in everything that we do. Again, like I said, for a country like Seychelles, it is our bread and butter. We live on tourism. Everybody is talking about tourism development. Everybody wants to do more. And then you say, but where do we draw the lines? Where do we say stop? In everything which we do in terms of tourism development, building hotels, how do we do it? But there again, like we said, a lot comes through communications, through a sensitization program, especially all the new products, trying to tell people to be more sustainable, to adopt more sustainable practices, to be able to encourage our existing hotels to use local production as well. Every little wins will eventually help the big cause. You're absolutely right. You ask, where do you draw the lines? Where do you find the right balance? Maybe today, we know that in every country, legislation comes, legislation change, government comes, government change, and then maybe you say, in the future, will the pledge that we've taken be respected? But as it stands today, like I said, we're very lucky in Seychelles. Right from day one, when we opened up our country to tourism, we opted for a non-must. And I can say that we've so far successfully kept our promise in terms of protection and environmental protection. We've put aside 50% of the little landmass which we have, our nature reserve protected areas. And of course, we went a little bit even further. Seychelles is big in terms of economic exclusive zone, 1.4 million kilometers of water. 30%, we've put it aside, we've pledged this must not be touched. And we pray and hope that the future generations keep the promise.
I think one of the problems with the Seychelles, and we all have to admit this, is that a lot of your problems are being generated elsewhere, both in terms of waste and climate change. And the consequences for the Seychelles, not only the Seychelles, but certainly the Seychelles, are really serious. We've got about 10 minutes left. I wanted to ask if there is anyone in the audience with a question that you'd like to ask. Nobody looks as though they're asleep, so there's a reasonable chance that there's a question lurking somewhere. Come on, is there somebody who would like to ask?
My question is for the Radisson engineer. What, in terms of operations, what technology you use to automate the operations at the hotels?
In terms of price,
Technology. Do you use technology?
yeah.
Is it in-house done in-house?
No, definitely. It's not in-house. It's a collaboration between all of the teams. It's suppliers, owners. We do our researchers. We do have our task force as responsible business for sustainability. We do have our smart softwares that we do generate as well, the softwares to identify possible of benefit and return on investment. So it's a whole collaboration between external and internal parties. As well, we have our consultants and we do energy audits for the property, which is internal and external. Part of my scope and the team is to do energy audit for the whole region and self-audit and engineering audit for the hotels. So it's I didn't maybe mention it in the beginning, but our office, which is the area support office in Dubai, and we do have our corporate support office in Madrid and Brussels. So those three offices, we are in charge of the EMEA region, and we do follow up on all of the properties and assist them in all aspects.
So the same question, but differently for for everyone. How important is, for example, for hoteliers or for tourism industry, in order to push for sustainability? How far are they willing to invest in technology to do so?
That's a very important question, but I'm going to hold it because I'm going to ask each of you for a closing statement at the end. So if you could hang on to that question, then we'll come back to it. It's a very good final question, but I have another question over here.
Hi, my question is for Bernadette. Could you briefly elaborate on the criteria that you use to certify a hotel as a sustainable property under the scheme that you mentioned?
There are quite a large sets of criteria for sure, but mainly around certain pillars like energy consumption, water, wastage. These are some of the three pillars around which the criteria are set, but there's quite a long list of criteria. And I can say that proudly today that the great majority of our large hotels are already certified. So now we're working also on the other ones to be able to make them get to, some of them are, I would say 30-50%, but get them there. There's quite a whole list of criteria recognized by international organization for sure. But like I say, around the three main pillars, wastage, energy consumptions, and also water consumptions.
Is there anyone else with a question for the panel? In that case, I'm going to just ask each of you to have a closing comment, possibly focused on the question we were asked before last, but whatever you want to say that you think we may have missed or is particularly important to emphasize.
So the one thing that we always miss at these discussions, Harold, is Scope 3 emissions. I never hear of a hotel that's measuring the Scope 3 emissions of their guests and the travel that the guests are incurring to get to the destination. And Scope 3 emissions are far, far more significant. I mean, in this region, all of the panelists here, the Scope 3 emissions that their resorts are incurring through the travel of their guests to get to the resort are actually far more significant. They're really the elephant in the room here than what's going on at the resort itself. They're not being measured, and as a result, hotels are not taking the sort of action they need to reduce those emissions. And there are some simple steps that hotels could be taking, like trying to encourage or spending more marketing dollars in countries that are close by to reduce air miles, encouraging guests to stay for longer in the country that they're visiting, But because they're not being measured, these things, I believe, I'd love to be corrected by any of my fellow panelists, but these things are not being done.
Keith, it is coming because of the pressure for those, particularly the tour operators who are adopting science-based targets. They have to address it, and it is definitely coming down the line. But you're right, it's still a long way off. Your turn, sir.
I will answer to the gentleman question. So, in terms of CapEx, as part of the company policy, we do have our long-range investment plan, which is a 10 years investment. And every year we do include the energy project. We do allow for a provisional sum for the energy project, and the owners of the hotels do commit and sign on mutual agreement along with us that they are gonna spend CapEx on this specific project. So this is how we're tackling it. And the other finance model is where you do have lots of ESCO companies that are ready to provide finance models with a payback period, which is the PPA, that you have the power purchase agreement with a return on investment. It varies. Typically, we do option to choose it between 5 to 8 years. We do have also other companies that they are offering. I will take it as an example for chillers. To replace a chiller, your old chiller, and have a new chiller more efficient with higher EER, energy efficient ratios, that will pay back in 8 years or 10 years, and finally the owner will end up on the chillers. Or other models as cooling as a service, where also companies do acquire your plant room and they will sell you the district cooling, retrofit, upgrade your systems, and finally the owner owns a new plant after 10 years, or it depends on the case study. So there are different finance models if the owner cannot invest or is not willing to invest. But the first option is that we do have the CapEx for the energy project. It's on the long-range investment plan that we're having yearly review on that.
Thanks very much. Bernadette.
I would say that let's use technology wisely to encourage more responsible tourism, especially from, the community, but also the visitors. And maybe what I would like to stress more from a marketing and communication point of view, it is very important that we continue to communicate to our visitors. Let's not take it as, how should I say this, that it is acquired. We need to talk more and more and encourage more sustainable practices to our guests coming to our country, to our destinations. I'll just take this, not only our visitors, but the population, yes, but if we were to take it inside a hotel, maybe our employers as well. In as much as we all know, all of us here, we've visited destinations, we've used hotel facilities, and a lot of times we've seen that maybe management is communicating to us through, a little write-ups. If you don't want to reuse your towel, just put it on the floor. If you don't want to reuse it, if you want to reuse your towels, you don't put it on the floor. But a lot of time, in as much as you don't drop your towels on the floor, when you come back, you see that your towels has been removed. So, you see, I've just taken this as an example. And then you said how many towels, which we did not ask to be washed, has been taken away as well to be washed. This is where I'm insisting a little bit more on communication, on sensitization, in as much as at times one makes the effort, but on the other hand, it is not understood by the other person. Maybe that particular staff thinks that they're doing us a favor to remove, but when we ask them not to remove it, because we were just thinking that we were doing our share, I will use my towel to 3 times, 4 times, why not just like we do at home? So my message is that let's avail of the technology, use it efficiently to be able to continue spread out the words across the globe so that each and every one of us can fairly contribute our share towards the green globe.
Thanks, Bernadette. Iftikhar.
Thank you. I want to certainly respond on your question. I think it's very important. And I confess over here, being a hotelier, that we are not doing enough from our side as a whole hotel industry. Same it go to tourism boards, and even I will blame to the government also. I mean, the amount of carbon emission every day, which we are traveling from Ajman, Sharjah to Dubai, you can see how many cars are coming every day. And resources are there, but we are not really thinking about this, So every day we are taking part into sin. So I think that it is really very important that we need to take it serious on a government level, which can make a big difference. When it becomes rules and regulation, it is much easier. Then you have to do it, Then there is no exemption. Similarly, go to tourism board, because they are like, their role is very big for us, as a hotel. So if they have a certification for us, which we have like a normal certification, if they implement the sustainable certification, I'm sure that so many things will clear. Because we are doing more as PR, as a fashion. You see most of the hotel, I mean, they are very green, but believe you me that when you enter inside, practically things are not there, because we just go for PR. So the time has come that we have to go beyond PR and to take part a real sustainable act, So I agree with you, and I confess that really we are not doing enough. But I think time has come, as Harold has started since long time responsible tourism. I saw him in London, and I was not really a green person at all. But I saw that the way he's doing, So today I am taking part. I have converted 600 staff. So we need to get actually more and more people like you and more audience to come and take part, and will make world different than what we have. Thank you.
Iftikhar, we need more converts like you. Shudan.
Thank you. Just to be very direct, the role of technology for us is a matter of life and death. We're using technology in a number of instances. In terms of, for example, when we spoke about carrying capacity of our ecosystems, we have installed camera traps for our animals, and we have used AI to analyze tens of thousands of photos, so we will know which animals we have, what are the movements of animals. We're, for example, building the first green bridge in Saudi along the main corridor, transportation corridor. We're going to build a big green bridge for the two parts of the ecosystems to continue being connected. We are using a lot of remote sensing data when it comes to our design and planning, and hopefully during our operational phase, we will be using data to track our environmental performance when it comes to environmental media such as water, energy, soil, etc. So yes, technology is super important for us.
So, Shudan, Bernadette, Keith, Sari, Iftikhar, thank you very much indeed for your contribution.